Hey, hi, welcome. So yesterday was a hot mess while filming, so we're refilming this video today. So it's just going to be basically a soft, everyday makeup look. Everybody on Instagram was pretty 50-50 when I had asked you guys if you wanted to see my channel start off with something really simple and easy and natural or something really dramatic. So we're going to start off with something that I would wear every single day to work, essentially, but maybe with like a little bit more coverage, and of course you can adjust it as you need to. So I'm going to start first with pinning back my hair because I hate when my hair is in my face. It annoys the life out of me. So let me get my clips. So I'm just going to swoop. And then in terms of my face, so the only thing that I have done so far is my morning skincare. So moisturizer, serum, SPF, that whole spiel. And then I also put on a little bit of the Too Faced Hangover Lip Treatment, which by the way is like literally the best lip treatment I've ever tried. The Laneige one did nothing for my lips, and I'm constantly putting on lip balm like most days. With this treatment, I literally don't have to reapply it. I only apply it at night or if I feel like I need it during the day, and then that's it. My lips stay super hydrated. So we're just gonna jump right in. I already did my brows off camera just because they take me a hot minute and they never are symmetrical, and they're just kind of, they do what they want. So we're just gonna start with shadows. So let me zoom you in a little bit so that way you guys can see. For today, it's going to be a relatively simple look that we're doing. Like basically like 1 or 2 shadows on the eye, just a liner because I always wear a false eyelash. So if you don't wear a false lash, you can definitely skip that and just pop onto mascara. And then we're not doing anything on the lower lash line. So this is super easy, super fast. If I was doing this for work, this would literally take me maybe about 15 to 20 minutes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and start with some single shadows. The first shadow that I'm going to be taking is in the shade Tiki, and it was from the original single shadow collection. I love it. It's one of my favorites. It's like a nice neutral brown. Anything that you have that will work. I know that there's several shades like in the Jaclyn Hill palette that are really similar. I'm just going to go ahead and pop that literally right into where the hollow of my crease is. I'm concentrating most of the color there, and then I can diffuse inward. I do bring this shadow inward, but I don't come all the way down into here. I just feel like that tends to pull the eye down. I already have a hooded and a small eye, and my eye naturally is a little bit droopy, so I don't like to put anything on the too far inside corner of my eye or too far on the outer portion of my eye, because all it'll do is just pull my eye down in either direction. So I like to keep a lot of any darkness that I ever put right in the center, and then I'll just kind of diffuse the edges. So we're going to go back to blending. Once you have the basic wash of color that you put on your eye, I actually don't think I want to add a deeper shade, but I do want to go ahead and add a little bit more of the brown just for a little bit more definition. So I'm just going to build on that color a little bit. We're actually going to go ahead and put a little of the bronzer in here and connect it into the brow and into the shadow that we just placed down, just so that way later on when we do contour our nose, it looks a little bit more cohesive and it doesn't look like you just have 2 stripes on your nose with no purpose. I always take the Hoola bronzer by Benefit. This is my favorite bronzer. It's the perfect shade for this as well. It's like a nice neutral color. It's like a very well-loved product, and this is actually the mini. I do have the full-size Hoola as well. I really only use it to contour my nose, so I feel like the pan size of the mini is actually perfect. So then what I'm going to do is, if I were to tilt my head back right now, you would be able to see that I have some hollowness in this area, right? Like it's a natural defined, like, I don't want to say crevice. It's like a naturally defined shape here. I naturally sink in from my socket of the eye. So right there is actually where we're going to be placing the color from the brush. So we're going to start in like a light flicking motion. Don't want the shape to be really straight or anything like that. It's just so that way when you do nose contour, you're already starting the base of where the contour is going to be. And if I look ahead, you can already see that's giving more definition into the socket already and already making the top of my nose look thinner. And I really haven't done anything except for adding that little bit of bronzer. The liner that I'm going to be using today is actually Sephora Gel Liner Pencil, and it is in the shade Cappuccino. It's a stunning color. It's a brown with a gold reflect to it. It's definitely one of my favorites. but this is just going to add a little something onto the eye. Because we did literally almost nothing to the eye look itself, this is going to add something additional to look at and make it more interesting and bring attention back to the eye, but it's not going to be overwhelming and it's not going to be too harsh because it is a brown pencil. It just has like a really beautiful reflect to it. It's not too crazy, just draws some attention back to the eye just because, like I said, we did so little there. And I'm somebody with my makeup as a whole, I love for my eyes to really come forward and look really just kind of an accentuated version of themselves. My eyes are brown, so they don't have like any wow factor to them, so I kind of have to create that with my eyeshadow or with a liner. So this is a really good way to do it. That's also why I really like to wear false eyelashes, because I feel like the difference that it makes once you have on eyelashes versus when you don't have eyelashes on is crazy. The lashes that I'm going to be using today, they are the Lily lashes in the style Mykonos, and this is just what they look like. If I look straight, you can really see this is the difference between a lash, an eye look that doesn't have any lashes to it and just like a little bit of mascara, and this would be the difference between an eye look that had the lashes. So it definitely does a lot, and again, for my eye color, wearing lashes brings so much more attention back to my eye. Okay, so now back to the face, back to the skin, I guess I should say. I'm going to be taking the Bobbi Brown Vitamin Enriched Face Base. This is the box that it comes in. I've actually only used this guy like a few times, which is why it's still in the box, because I wanted to do a first impressions with it. But honestly, I can already tell you I love it. Like, there's nothing about it that I don't like. Like a really nice moisturizer that has like a smoothing effect to the skin. Something else that's very, very, very similar in my collection that I own that I love just as much, but that's not nearly as expensive, I think it's about half the price, is the Josie Maran Sorrel Skin Finishing Balm, and I freaking love it. And the difference between the two is that one not only blurs and preps the skin the same way that this does, but that actually adds like a really beautiful radiance to the skin. So if you're more on the dry side, I would actually do the Josie Maran one over the Bobbi Brown one. So I'm just going to take a little bit of this Bobbi Brown face base, and I'm just gonna take it on my nail because you know how it goes when you have long nails and you're dipping into stuff. So I'm just gonna take a little bit of this, and because I have moisturizer pretty much all over the skin, this is really just gonna go anywhere that I feel like I have any pores, any texture, and I need extra hydration. And for me, that's always the center of my face. I know some people are really oily in the center. I'm just really dry everywhere. I'm probably like the driest human you would ever meet. If you know me personally, you know they say it all the time. So hydration is key for me here, and my makeup will break up here specifically because I'm so dry. So if I don't do anything right there, it's just not gonna work. I am taking a little bit of whatever is left over on that moisturizer primer situation, putting it on my forehead. I typically don't put much product on my forehead. There's not really a lot going on for my forehead to like cover or conceal, so I even do like very light to minimal foundation there. I don't want it to look heavy. That's this whole vibe for today's look, is it's coverage, but it's not heavy, and it looks a lot like skin. Today, we're going to be using the, oh my god, I really should have probably wiped this stuff down. I think it was like extra dirty because I filmed yesterday and I just was like touching everything. But this is it. It is the Clinique Even Better Foundation. I don't know if it's going to focus. There it goes. And the shade is WN, which is 30 Biscuit. So I'm going to be taking a little bit of that. I'm just going to put it on the back of my hand because why the hell not? And where's my little mirror? Let me grab my small mirror. And the sponge that I'm going to be using today is the e.l.f. Beauty Sponge. This is actually my favorite sponge to do my foundation with, like if I had to pick a sponge. I love it far more than I've ever loved a beauty blender as well. I never really cared for the beauty blender for the price of it, if I'm being really honest. Just wasn't my favorite thing. So I just picked a little bit up on the flat side of the sponge, and I am just blending that onto the skin, just pressing really lightly. This foundation and this sponge really do everything for you, so you don't need to be like rough or aggressive with your skin. And again, we're pressing in just because I'm a human and I have pores, I have texture, I have acne, I have blackheads. So when you're pressing the product in, instead of swiping, you're just reinforcing the product, and it works really well. I do have texture. It's not as severe as some. So if you find that your skin texture is really, really bad and that whenever you wear makeup, it's just unbearably like accentuated and you're really self-conscious about it, don't use a sponge, use a brush. But use a brush, something nice and dense, and go downwards. In a downwards motion, like stroke all your product downwards. What that's going to really do is it's actually going to help lay the texture down, versus if you're pressing, you're picking back up the texture. I hope this makes sense. So if you have severe texture, if you have like a lot of lines, a lot of wrinkles, do a brush, a denser brush with a light amount of pressure, and go in a downwards motion. It'll make sure that your texture or dryness, if you're super dry, doesn't pick up. So that was just one thin, really light layer of foundation so far. So still looks like skin, just looks really natural, not heavy. I'm gonna go in with a second layer. On a day-to-day, it really just depends. Sometimes I feel like I need another layer, sometimes I don't. It really just depends on how my skin is behaving. For the sake of today's video, I'm gonna do another layer so that I can show you how it builds. But I do want to be really honest, this foundation, it is like a medium coverage. It's not necessarily going to be your full coverage foundation, so don't expect that from this. I think that's one of the biggest things that I would say about foundation in general and like how people perceive it is you can't expect your foundation to do all the work that you're supposed to be doing on your skin at home. So don't expect like, listen, okay, my acne is still gonna peek through, like the little bumps and texture and blemishes that I do have are still gonna come through. Things are still gonna settle into a line. Like when I put on my concealer, you guys are gonna see what I mean, but it's gonna do that because that's what your face has. Like you have natural small fine lines, you have pores, you have texture. So don't be upset or think you need to change your foundation 1,000 different ways because everybody and their mom on Instagram has like heavy, you know, Facetune or just smooth, flawless skin. Like there's a lot behind the scenes that we don't see into people's skincare. And I take great care of my skin, but I still don't have perfect skin. So you guys can see like in this small area here, there's still a little bit of my bumps and my texture showing through. I personally, I know, like that. It doesn't bother me for any reason that like a little bit of my skin peeks underneath my makeup. I'm gonna take a little bit though because I do have this itty bitty little pimple who just wants to, you know, come out and say hello. Not taking too much extra product though, only because I don't like putting a lot of product on my mouth. The second that I do is the second that I start creasing and my makeup starts falling apart. So friendly tip if you feel like you have that same problem. Less is more on the areas that you tend to crack and break up around. Okay. So not going in with any more product right now, I'm just pressing everything that I have onto my skin so that it looks more skin-like. But yeah, basically you can't, so to go back to my original point of this conversation, is you can't expect your makeup to do things for you that you're not even doing for your own skin. That's the best way I can say it. So if you're not hydrating your skin, if you're not taking good care of it, you can't expect your foundation to just pull in and be like, all right sis, I got you, texture, pores, no more, bye, and like full coverage your face and that's gonna work for you. Like that's not how it goes. Like your foundation isn't designed to be utilized that way. So just keep that in mind when you're shopping for a foundation. If you have the same consistent problem with different foundations, look at your primer, look at your base, look at your skincare. At some point you have to take a step back and say, okay, this isn't a foundation issue. This is at this point maybe the way that I'm applying it or my technique. Oh, let me show you this. I'm going to go ahead and take the e.l.f. Camo Concealer. This is the newer one that they had came out with. This is their more hydrating one, and my shade is in the medium sand color. So this isn't going to brighten for me. This is about the same tone as my skin, just slightly more yellow. But I like the yellow tone to it. I think it does a lot for my skin in terms of brightness and making everything look nice and neutral. And if I do need to conceal like an acne spot or a pimple, I like that it has the yellow in it so that it kind of helps neutralize the redness that I may have. I'm not going to take it on my pimple today because it's just not that deep. Wow, have I been out of focus this whole time? That's exciting. So I'm going to blend the under eye out. So let me see. Okay, let me kind of show you guys what I was talking about. So right here under my eye, there is the smallest line. I've had that line forever, no matter what I've done for it, No matter how many times I've tried to fix it, it's always there. And even all the setting powders that I've used, like, it's never not creased in that area. It's always going to crease. But I've done everything that I can to take care of it. But honestly, you guys, this is what I'm trying to tell you, is like, you can't expect, I wouldn't expect my concealer to fix that. That's a problem with my skin. That's a skin, and not even a problem, that's just something that my skin does naturally. So don't be unrealistic about the results that you want to see from your makeup, is all I'm trying to say. That whole freaking 20-minute rant for that one sentence. I'm gonna go ahead and take now my Sephora collection. This is the Micro Smooth powder. So I always press my powders into my skin if I'm using a brush, because I, again, want to reinforce the makeup that I just put down. So if I have a liquid underneath and I go through and I'm swiping all over the place like a crazy person, then my makeup in turn is gonna slide. Think about it that way. So just be mindful about, like, even placement. Sometimes if you don't set well and you have to do like a bronzer or something as well, you're gonna get a very similar maybe result where you're not gonna have a really nice smooth area on your face. It's gonna be really patchy and really uneven. So taking more of that powder. I'm not bringing it too high around the under eye area because I don't need the powder there. I'm gonna go in with a different powder to set that. And I do take it on the forehead, but really lightly, honestly, kind of whatever is residual on my product, on my brush. Oh my god. Whatever residual product is left on my brush at that point is what goes on there. Same thing with my nose. Whatever's on there goes on there. And then around my mouth, the same thing. Because like I mentioned, the more makeup that you put in that area, the more likely that it is going to crease and settle. So yeah, alright. Because I noticed it right now, is I am going to take this brush. It's just an older, not an older brush, it is an old brush. It's from Amazon too, I don't have a name for it. But it's just like a fluffy brush. I know Morphe has one similar. I'm just going to blend this little edge right here. Because we did eyes before we did face, just go back in and blend this area out, because you don't want there to be a difference between where the foundation started and where your shadow was, if that makes any sense. Let's do the under eye. So I use two powders to set my under eye. I rarely ever change them. Both of them are 100% necessary for me. You guys saw the concealer that I use under my eye is pretty much the same color as my skin tone. I do that on purpose. I don't really like the whole light concealer trend. It's not for me and it's not my favorite. So with that being said, I like to use a brightening powder. So for me, that is the, again, sorry, I know, disgusting, Fenty Beauty, and it is the lavender powder. So it is this guy right here. So this helps brighten and gives my under eyes a really smooth texture. And again, smooth as an under eye can be. And I really love it. It doesn't get heavy. It's not caking under the eye. So I use the Fenty one as one to brighten. The Fenty one also does really smooth my under eye as well. It's not like a crazy bright. If you did bake with it, I think you would be like glowing from the under eye, so keep that in mind. But the other powder that I use, and it's actually my favorite loose powder right now, is the Maybeline Fit Me powder. I get mine in the shade 10. Again, sorry, packaging is gross. My products are well loved, and I think that's like the best part about seeing like kind of used products like that, is like, you know that I appreciate them. And I'm almost out. Like, this is almost empty. Speaking of, if you guys want to see an empties or like a favorites video, let me know. So what I do is I just mix the two. So I'm not going to show you because it would just be a mess, and I'm super clumsy, so I would drop that literally everywhere. So I'm going to take a different sponge than the one that I used earlier. The one that I was using earlier was the e.l.f. one. Now I'm going to go ahead and take my Morphe Total Complexion sponge, and I'm going to take the tip of the sponge and dip into the Maybelline powder first. Because the Maybelline powder is closer to my skin tone and the lavender one is brightening, I don't like to do the lavender first because that's going to be the first powder to touch my skin, and I don't want it to catch weird and be like too bright. You could set your under eye with a powder prior and then reinforce it with like a bake. That's just not gonna work for me, to be honest. Okay, so now you guys can see it's dipped. So a little bit in the Maybelline and a little bit one on the Fenty. Again, I'm not going to reblend under my eye. The one line that's there is literally just the line that's always there, so he's fine. He can live there. I'm going to just take this. And all I'm doing is placing the product on and blending out a bit. Now, I don't completely blend in with this Morphe sponge. What I actually will do is I will switch. What I will do after the fact is take the same sponge that I was using for my foundation, and now I will just press that on top. I don't know why, I just feel like it blends it so much better than if I sat there and just blended it in with the powder on the sponge from the other one. So I do this. It makes a big difference. I feel like it adds the radiance back in under my eye as well, because there's still a little bit of the leftover foundation that's just hanging out on the sponge. And yeah, I just feel like it sets it without looking crazy. So a lot of times people don't bake under the eye when they're doing their lower lash line. To each their own, it's totally up to you. But what I have noticed, if you do under the lash line kind of shadow or detailing, you will get fallout even if you can't see it. And it makes such a big difference when you put in all this time and effort on getting your under eye bright and highlighting and concealing and doing all of that to then have it like kind of have a cast of your shadow. You know, so I would highly recommend just put a little bit of powder. You don't even necessarily need to bake. You don't need to do like a heavy amount of it with a sponge. Just put some powder like on your cheek to kind of catch anything that might fall. So for bronzer today, I think I'm going to do the e.l.f. Forever Sunkissed bronzer. This is actually my favorite bronzer. It's pretty rare that I ever hit pan on anything, just because if you saw the amount of shit that I own, you would know that it's like physically impossible almost for me to like utilize anything in my storage. So this is a product. You can see it's really well loved. It has like a nice little pan in it. This is only $6 and it's literally the best dupe that I've found for the Fenty bronzer, which I do also love. The formula is really similar. The one thing I will say about the e.l.f. one is that it is a primer infused bronzer. That's like the line that it is part of. So I would just say be cautious of leaving it open or not closing it all the way, because I do find that the formula itself does dry out after an extended amount of time of having it. I just press it into my face. Again, same reason that I press everything else in. I don't like to move around the product. I know I set, but I don't heavily set my face. And on my cheek area, I barely put any of the Sephora translucent, the Sephora Micro Smooth powder. So I don't want to go crazy and like swipe around and then move my face because I was putting on bronzer. I am going to be using the Juvias Place palette. This is the Saharan Blush Volume 2. Oh, let's take Leela. I like a more, you guys can probably tell that's a bright ass shade too. And I'm not somebody who likes blush typically. I've been more recently into it. Don't know why. I'm not mad at it. So we're going to continue using it. But I do like something that's more of like that baby doll pink. I just think it's so much more flattering on my skin tone. Take a brush. This is just a double-sided brush from Sephora. I'm not going to show it to you because I'm embarrassed about how disgusting it is. But I'm going to take the angled side of it and I'm going to go ahead and use that on the cheek. This blush is really pigmented. I realize that it's going to look crazy for a second. Just bear with me for two reasons. Blush is the first thing to fade when it comes with makeup. So it's going to be gone in literally a few minutes anyways. But not only that, I'm going to, I don't want to call it bake. I'm just going to clean up or show you how to clean up the bottom of your bronzer right now. And that's going to eventually get buffed over, so it'll be fine. So now the blush and bronzer is on. They're not done because we're not done blending. But I am going to show you in the event that you bring your bronzer too far down, I'm going to show you how to clean it up. That's another reason why I like that stamping method. I feel like it really makes sure the bronzer stays where you need it to go and you don't have to do the cleanup because that is an additional portion of your time that you're going to be utilizing to fix that mistake. But in the event that you do, because life happens and none of us are perfect, I just take a little bit of the Maybeline powder, and the Maybeline powder, not the Fenty powder, because like I said, the Fenty powder is brightening. You don't want like a bright white jaw. It's just not the vibe. And all you're going to do is lightly stamp it along wherever you feel like you dragged it too low, and it'll just carve out for you. Going back in with the Hoola bronzer now, same little guy from earlier, this guy. I'm just taking a little bit on the same brush that I was using also, and I'm just going to go ahead and press that into the skin, like so. And following basically the same line that we had started to create earlier. I always clean up around my nose. This is not something that I would skip if I did do the contour around my nose. This is something that I would make sure that is done just because nose contour can really easily look muddy and look unfinished. So I like to just go back in and reinforce where I want the brightness with that powder so that it looks a lot more natural. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the same brush that I used on my Sephora powder, and I'm just going to go ahead and buff that bake that I had on the bottom and just press it into the skin. So once that's all blended through, I'm going to take the same sponge that I was using, same e.l.f. sponge, and go again over the cheek, over the bronzer, over the just skin in general on this side of my face, and on the opposite side as well, obviously. But just to kind of melt everything in together, I'm going to take my Hourglass powder. This is in the shade Diffused Light with the Morphe sponge that I was using earlier. I'm just swiping it across the top to pick up a little bit, about that much. Looks like a lot, it's really not. Hourglass powders are very, very, very sheer. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to put this on the inner portion here of my eye and on like my cheek area, and I'm just going to press that into the skin. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take my Honey Love lipstick from MAC. This is a really nice like nude shade. It has like a peachy tone to it. I'm going to just put that all over the lip. Alright, here's that lip, and I'm just gonna throw on a little bit of gloss because on lip polish from Buxom in the shade Right Russian. And the final thing that I always literally wait to the very last thing to do is brow setting. This is going to be my 24-hour brow setter from Benefit. This is my favorite. For my brows today also, I always use either the Benefit powder or the Benefit pencil.